Okay, I'm going to keep this lecture a little bit shorter, and it's a shorter lecture, but also it's mainly just dedicated to trying to set you on your path for the practical program, the practical class this afternoon. Okay, as I said earlier, there are a range of specific methods that have been developed for CBPR. The range of these methods are really about as broad as the creativity will go, and that one book that I have on the reference list that you can download, a lot of that is made up of just different ideas for uses with things, and I haven't even gone through all of them. The essence is it must, or the methodology is it must allow for community participation and provide good quality results. Just three methods that I thought were really interesting were the SWOT, very simple, force field analysis, and photo voice or video voice. Now, SWOT is really, and with all of these, with all of these methods, many of these methods are like SWOT and force field analysis are really ways of geographic or demonstrating the methodology diagrammatically. So it's a way of looking at what you're doing and just spelling it out and just making it easier to hold onto the concept. I remember doing these SWOT things at school as parts of school societies, and there was the badge, that was another one. If you divide a page, draw a rough shape of a badge, divide it into 4, and you can fill each of those compartments with something that's going to, and you can replace the SWOT with any number of things. You can go strengths with resources, weaknesses with challenges. Yeah, thank you. And you end up with Scott, or if you place opportunities with what's A? Alliances. You end up, essentially this is a tool that's very flexible as well. But the SWOT is something that particularly has been repeated so many times. And literally is, this organization looks at, individuals look at the organization, their community, their context, and puts down strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And all it does is it gives you a chance to look at them. And sometimes, and often if something is placed in front of you, it's much easier to examine it. Being human beings, we tend to the glass half full, the glass half empty, or the engineer's version, the glass is twice as large as it needs to be. These kinds of things are just ways, we have a tendency to look at either the problems or the good things or whatever. And a lot of the new age stuff tells us only to look at the positives and then the negatives will disappear. That also isn't true. You do need to look at everything, and this is just systematically looking at everything. One can then sit with the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and say which is strong, which is weak, which is sustainable, which is going to exist for the long term. So these strengths, are they sustainable? Are they really strong? It might be that we've got a very good teacher in our school. Okay, there's a chance she might be given a job in a private school at a much higher salary, so that's a slightly, we'll look at that. But another strength might be the fact that there are 3 good schools that have consistently good results. Okay, that's a long-term strength. Threats, there's 4,000 shacks. Okay, that's going to stay as a threat for a long time. And one can also try and change the threats into opportunities, and all the weaknesses into opportunities. So it's kind of a way of also looking at the reality. And then you start to work with that, you start to match strengths against weaknesses and strengths against threats. And you start to try and, it's really a way of systematizing and looking at reality. And then one can build on that with all the other ideas that I've been talking about. And it's just something to add to the arsenal. The force field analysis is, in some respects, a different version of this. And this is particularly if you want to put in a big change into the community. Now, so let's say we're wanting to close down a whole lot of shebeens in the community, reduce alcohol intake. So force field analysis for method. So you'll then look at the various forces for and against. So again, it's just a matter of looking at taking out the big picture, looking at it. So essentially, you draw a force field diagram, write the goals, the change to be implemented at the top of a large sheet of paper, and divide the paper into two columns by drawing a line down the middle. On the left are the driving forces, the positives. On the right are the restraining forces. So, if we take let's go to the next one. Once the driving restraining forces are identified, the following questions: are they valid? How do we know? What is the significance of each? What are their strengths? Which can be altered? What not? What can be altered quickly? Which ones only slowly? If forces altered, would it produce rapid change? You get the picture. So if we're looking, say, at the example of trying to get rid of the shebeens in the community, one of the driving forces would be those members that want to change, want them removed. Might be legislation that's coming into place, might be the police force, might be new legislation around driving and drunk, it might be education or awareness, growing awareness of the risk for women in these venues. What are the forces against? Would be those people who do drink, the presence of legal venues, the presence of other alcohol venues around the community. Could be just a growing criminal element in the group, and the threat associated with it is if people start moving from alcohol to tip. So you then start looking at all of these forces and seeing which are real and which aren't. So the movement from alcohol to tip is possible amongst some of the youth, but it's unlikely, so you can diminish that slightly. Presence of other alcohol sales around the community, that is a big issue, and will mean that people might still drink as much, and might mean they travel more when drunk. The forces and positive, encouraging change, the legislation is there and the police are there, so some of this change is happening. And that's likely to be sustained. Those who drink and don't drink are more or less equal in size, so it's quite difficult, they kind of negate each other out. The risk for women, yes, it's a real issue amongst women, but large sections of the community might not care about. There's a huge levels of sexism in the community, so does everybody concerned, but it is a big issue in the community. So you start to get a sense of what's going on, make a sense of what the pressures are in relation to a particular intervention. Now this, if we applied it to the diarrheal example, our clinic services, but they are severely oversubscribed. There are some toilets, they're not enough, but is there potential for bringing more toilets in? Forces against are Just there's arguments around the transience of the community and not wanting to develop it. There's the real force, winter storms, flooding, and the risks associated with that. So it's just a form of graphically describing and putting out the forces for and against. It's, as with any other, it can be somewhat reductionistic, and you could see even from the examples I was providing, they're not all fit very cleanly. Okay. These are tools that it's really, I'm going to go through them very quickly. I'm not convinced that they're really part of this, but I thought they were interesting. Just ways of drawing out, and this is particularly if you're talking to community members about memory and accessing stories about their past. And it's been used a lot with refugees, particularly children refugees who've had to travel a lot. And body scans is used a lot with sexual violence survivors and people who are out of touch with their body, torture survivors as well. Body scan, very simply, you lie on a very large piece of paper and your body is outlined against it. The person then stands on that and starts to colour the body. Areas where they feel pain, areas that they're worried about, areas that have no sensation, parts that they love, parts that they don't like of their body. Again, it's a way for survivors of various traumas to be able to just look at their bodies as almost as something separate from them and to put their attention there. And it's something that can be done, that people with fairly low levels of skill can actually implement. And then what you normally do is go and sit with the person and talk through what's happening there. So it does also have a counselling role. The ropes and stones, the approach for recovering life stories, is very successfully used with refugee children. In some respects it's similar to the fishes and boulders method I described earlier. These are children who travelled for more than a year, and even before migration their lives are unsettled. So they're traumatised between what they experienced in their home country and their travels, current destination, and stuff can get confused. What you do is you lay out a rope on the ground that represents a child's life, and you give them stones, sticks, and buttons. And they start to place these stones, sticks, and buttons on the rope. And one end of the rope is their birth, the other is where they are now. And the stones represent the bad events, the sticks represent major changes, and the buttons positive events. And it gives them a way of starting to now establish an order, because again it's externalizing these traumas. And they can look and say, okay, now when I think about it, when we were locked up, that was when we just after we'd entered Ghana from Rwanda. And so, but witnessing the deaths that happened there were some deaths later, but they weren't as bad as those. And just gives a way of ordering events. And then the child can then, in consultation with the researcher or with a trained community member, obtain the story. And can be used for shorter term events as well. Memory boxes are both a therapeutic approach for grief and a way of gathering information. It was developed around the HIV epidemic for families with parents of young children. An essential memory box is supposed to store the parent's life story and messages from the parent to the child. And this was really done in the days before ARVs were in large supply, so parents were expecting to die before their children were old enough to be able to tell them. And it's put very much on those capsules that you bury underground to recover many years later to tell a story of an event. It's similar. The book, it would usually include a book with a written story from the parent. Print media, when available, favorite objects, books. As they use the tool to pass on, and so the children could remember their family heritage. And it's that as a research tool provides a very useful tool for understanding how families' lives were affected by AIDS. And this was really done in two major centres in South Africa. In the Western Cape, it was done largely as a therapeutic tool, and in KZN it was done largely as a research tool. And at a simpler level, scrapbooks could form a similar function. Okay, yeah. Okay. Everybody happy? Okay. Photo voice or video voice. Again, not a lot of slides. It's a very simple technique. But in some respect, what you do with this is you turn your research in community into researchers. And something that I was first introduced to by a teacher in KZN, who was doing it with lecture at KZN, was doing it with their first year students and sent them out with a disposable camera, and they had to take photographs and come back and develop posters of HIV/AIDS in their community. And images came back of alleyways outside nightclubs, of clinics, of accidents, and different representations of AIDS. But it gave a very powerful insight into what was going on in terms of AIDS in this community. And it's a way for, particularly for people with low levels of literacy or for marginalized groups, to really start to present what is going on. Because they can go out, they take power and control with the camera and can take photographs of issues and then can come back and talk about them. And as I said, it blurs the line between research and, because it turns your research into the researcher who then feeds the information back. So it also can be also quite empowering to the people you're working with. And it's very powerful and can provide a very powerful advocacy tool for education. Method, literally, you set out a theme of what you want to work on. You select community members who take up this up. You might want to do purposive sampling. You might want to send a group of young men, group of young women, group of older men, group of older women out. Maybe some professional people from the community. Equip each person with a camera. It can be a cheap disposable, or in modern era, just make sure one of them has a smartphone. Or with a video camera. With a video camera, the processing gets a lot more complicated. Because you can then, with a video camera, you can splice the film together, edit the film and make a short video. But it does require an additional level of sophistication, both in terms of your respondents, participants, and in terms of the technology required. I don't know many researchers who'd be able to do that, but I suppose that's where technical support comes in. But, being able to go out with a camera is a lot easier. These pictures can create a representation of that issue in the community. So I spoke about the examples with HIV. Another issue, wasn't using photographs in this case, but was using drawn pictures. Children were asked to draw pictures of things that worried them in their community. And the children came back with a whole string of images, and the one that I do remember was of a street corner with a whole lot of young youth standing there. And became clear that the children were terrified walking more than a block, because the youth would hang around on the corners and would terrorize them. These were unemployed youth gang members, and they would, if they were sent out to buy something from the shops, money might get stolen from them. So they had to find ways of safe passages for these kids. It was an intervention that was developed from this. And the one place it was used, the story of the feces in the pathway. We were showing photographs, when this was also shown through photographs of the pathway, and you could see in summer it was obviously a lot worse than winter, because winter stuff, a lot of it would be cleared away by the rains. What you do is you then take these pictures, and then you can work on two levels. You can either just look at the pictures themselves, or you can ask the people your respondents to structure these pictures into a representation, and then to work from that. It's also useful to tell stories about the pictures. So yeah, you can, and then that pamphlet or that poster becomes then one, it becomes a potential intervention tool, but also becomes a representation of the ideas that are caught through this group. And you can then sit and construct an entire focus group around this poster or these pictures. And there's a lot of work, more work is being done around the drawings, but it's very similar with photographs.
You say here you can analyze the pictures. In what way do you mean analyze the pictures?
Well, there are ways of analyzing, so if there's an image of a shebeen, let's say, and maybe there are 3 images inside, you can see, okay, so this one has so this is a big area for dancing, there's no dark spots in it, so that might be safe. The toilets are off there, the toilets are really bad condition, it's unlikely, but there are doors on 1 or 2 of the toilets. So it's possible that people can go in there, look at the other space in it. Okay, this is the drinking area. Okay, the first area was kind of a dancing area, so that's where we'd expect a lot of the flirting or the pre-sexual activity to happen, with people trying to pick each other up. Around that area there's a pool table and the bar. That's where the more serious drinkers hang out. Around the pool table there might be some showing off. Just immediately outside there's a lot of walls, but there's a park down just about a small open area just a little bit down there with some trees. Okay, maybe that's an area couples might go. There's street lights in the area, but in a block down there's an open lot where there are no street lights. Is that area less safe for people when they're leaving? So you're starting to look at images and then starting to get a sense of what can you read from this image. And obviously, if you're looking at interaction, looking at an image of people dancing, you might start to see where people's hands are, who's talking to who, how the groupings are formed. I'm not particularly skilled at, and I haven't done much, I haven't really done anything at a scientific level around analysis of pictures, but, and that's, as you get more skilled, so you learn to tell more and more from it. You obviously then have to go and test those ideas out. If it is, particularly say the group photograph I was talking about, that, is this, how consistent are these groupings, etc. Is this area where there's a lot of open spaces that genuinely used for dancing, is that a space where pickups occur? Right? You need to triangulate the information a lot, but you can draw a lot of information from a picture. Goals is to enable people to record and reflect on their community's strengths and concerns, capture images and pictures or videos. You can promote a critical dialogue and knowledge about important issues through a small or large group discussion or photographs or video. And to reach policy makers or in other ways to help affect change. And one thing that we found, even on certainly in funding proposals, if you can put a picture of what's going on in the community, in some respects it makes it more powerful. And it's just having that dual, and take it to policymakers. And you can talk about, this is what the stretchy street looks like at night. This is why women are vulnerable. And you start to then plot the numbers of attacks on women in that area. You create a much more powerful image and story. So it will very seldom would be used on its own. It will mostly be used in conjunction with other processes. Okay, examples of representations of HIV/AIDS in the community get beyond the obvious and restricted ABC. Can pick up on hidden threats. Stigma is often a big issue. So, a person might find photographs to indicate stigma. It might be a person with HIV that's left alone. It might be stigma is a difficult one. That very often the community come up with very creative systems of representing. They might say stigma exists and then just have images of empty rooms or things like that. As I said, a similar project can be used with artwork, and there was a big project in Hart Bay using art, and they pulled together a whole lot of school kids, and they did it was more of an advocacy project around discrimination. Okay. So I've got no idea if this photo voice idea will work. How do you feel about it?
So what you do is, not in this setting here today, but you go, community will go out and take photos on
an issue.
And then they come back and discuss them.
They come back and discuss them, or they develop something for themselves. It might be that, let's say you're looking at issue of gender violence. It might be that you send young women, young men, older women, older men, and you take those 4 groups, send them off to go and take photographs. Now the young woman might come back and ask them, once they come back, to then put those photographs, stick the photographs onto a sheet of paper and put some commentary with them, and how they understand the issue of gender violence in their community. Now, the young woman might come back with images around sexism, men making catcalls at them, dark places where they feel unsafe. I'm completely making this up. Young men might come back with things of photographs of people drunk in a venue, of gangsters with weapons, and also dark spaces. There might be some overlap. Older women might come back with concerns about the clinic. The children going to the clinic, they might show wounds and injuries. They might show pregnant babies. Older men might, let's be agent and provocateur, they might show images of girls in mini skirts or revealing outfits. They might show images of girls drinking and trying to blame the young woman for violence. So what you get in there is you're getting not just the photographs, you start to get the images and the stories that they tell. You then sit down, probably all together, and everybody presents their story, and then you can have a discussion around it. So it's a tool that can be used in multiple ways. With the diarrheal example, just going out, photographs of toilets that are overfilled, where the feces is flaying out, spaces where people do go to shit otherwise, stagnant water, babies playing in stagnant water. all of these images that starts to add power, and then people can then talk about these issues as well. So in some respects, sometimes the photograph might eventually be reduced to almost insignificance compared to the stories that come about with it. Okay, do you want to do it as one group? Okay, now as I said, this is very experimental for me. I thought to develop on what was spoken about last week, and there were two issues really last block, that came up. It was really food safety, food provision, and security. Seemed to be the two main health issues that appeared. And then there's access to health services.
What's the second one?
Safety and security, particularly for women over weekends and that. Which would you prefer to do?
There's probably a lot of pictures of safety because you've got like the cameras, you can take photos of the entrances.
A lot of the safety issues is due to night, but a lot of the safety issues is due to time of day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you can stay, you can take a picture of an open area and include, and it will show where the lights are currently.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, this is not, I'm not asking you for a defining piece of work. And then I was going to say, load them onto a computer and produce something. But it might be easy, it's up to you, if you want to lay it out on a computer or just print them and lay it out on a piece of paper. But just what I want you to try and do is to take some of the photographs and develop a connection and a slight story with them. And to take the form of a kind of educational poster or advocacy poster.
And with our assignments, how much wording do you want on it? Is it just mostly just photos? You don't need how much?
Let's talk about that after you brought this back, because I want to get a sense from you about how this exercise.
So you're just going to take photos now?
Yeah. So photographs come back in about 45 minutes, and then we can start doing the process of laying out. My thinking generally of the assignment is to produce a pamphlet that you, with posters that you feel from your personal issue would be useful, would be good. Good, thank you.